Hi, my name's Joel. Thanks very much, everyone. Really appreciate you coming and taking the time. My question's maybe a bit long, but in my head, I'm guessing most people here are sort of bought into the idea of how important it is, education and things like that. And, it starts at home with our own Christian kids and our own Christian families. But then there's obviously this other side of it where you've got people coming from completely other sides of that. And I'm involved in the Melville Knox Highland School. And one thing in my head is that I'm thinking at the moment we're very much, it is not that we're exclusively for Christian families at all, but that's what we're dealing with. But at some point there's going to come that, not clash, but the difficulties that come when you're dealing with kids who have got more problems and things like that. And it's just your general thoughts on how these two worlds will collide, or how, advice or what you think about when, your little Christian community and how it can work with, the outside world where you've got people who are coming from completely different, upbringing, different social class, all these kind of things. Just your thoughts on those two worlds colliding and what opportunities and challenges there might be there.
So are you saying like different faiths as well? Is that yeah? Okay. So there was a great school, sadly, due to the VAT increase that the government brought in, shut down, Cedars, and they actually had a proper Christ-centered Christian school. They had more non-Christian kids than Christians in the school, and 90% of those kids are now born-again believers. So you still stay focused on your Christ-centeredness. Don't change for anyone else, because any parent that's bringing a kid into those schools will know what your mission is, what your your belief, your faith, your statement of faith. Thank you. I knew there was faith in there. Statement of faith and all these things. So they know what they are putting their kids into, but we don't conform to them. We influence them. So that's the difference. And that's why Cedars was actually accomplishing that. When I was involved with Manor Christian School in Edinburgh, we also had parents, bringing their kids from different faiths, asking just maybe for 6 months or for a year. We allow it, but they know that we're standing on Christian values. We are starting the morning with prayer. We are going to end in prayer. If they ask us a question relating to the faith, we are going to answer biblically. So they already know that. So that's the difference with a Christ-centered Christian school, is that you will focus on Jesus no matter what, and everyone will know that. So it depends on your statement of faith and everything, what's available out there to read. Yes, you do have schools who say they're Christian and they're not Christian, and then that's where all the chaos happens. Then you see teachers changing, headmasters changing, and then it doesn't become a Christian school anymore. So we just got to keep standing and don't allow them to influence us, but we influence them.
I want to say something really quick. So I hear, how do our worlds collide or come together? And something you said, like, how do we deal with the kids that have more problems? I think one of our challenges in life is presuming that we're not meant to have problems. And I think being Christian, we get to go to God with those problems. And we get to shift our perspective in the sense of, why am I seeing this? What do I need to learn, or how do I need to contribute to the betterment of this for this child as educators, right? And then also, I think the education system, the way the government have operated it, is very much about conforming students. Like, this is how we think, this is how we do things, and there's kind of like no other way that's celebrated around that. And this is the way it needs to be. Whereas the God I know celebrates uniqueness. He celebrates people thinking differently. So my kind of like input would be, let's find a way to celebrate students, to encourage them and empower them to be them within principles that build their character. And I think if we have an education system or program that celebrates that, I think it's far easier to collide whatever and whomever comes into that equation. Anyone else wants to question?
So I would say on a practical level, at least what we do at Arise, is we do have a statement of faith. It's part of our enrollment process. We ask the parents to agree or affirm. So if they agree with us, they're standing with us in faith. If they're affirming, they're saying that they respect that this is the platform from which we will be teaching. We also have the students agree or affirm. So we recognize that we're creating a safe place for anyone to come. And we have students and families from different belief systems with us. Yet they recognize that this is what we will be teaching from, and that we will be creating a safe place for their students to unpack ideas through apologetics, through language, through all the subjects. And that's been just a real cornerstone piece of how we've done it to ensure that we're providing that safe place so that they can work through the big questions that teens have about salvation, about what it looks like practically, and how we can partner with those families to create that. But agreeing or affirming and respecting is how we approach it, so that anybody can come to us knowing that that is where we will, that's where our line is.
Thank you, Shannon. Do we have another question? Or I've got a couple. This one would be for John. So as a professing Christian man, working in secular schools, what's been your experience of it, and maybe what advice could you give to maybe other Christians from working in schoolings or have their children in secular schools?
If it's a secular school that your child goes to, like a state school, then you're well within your rights to have a Christian faith. As a teacher, however, it's a little bit different. It's a bit of a grey area. I'm sure there's some guidance somewhere that I can read. But I think the line is you can share your faith, but you have to make it clear that that's not the only way. There's other religions and other paths you can choose. So I usually prefer just to, the kids, lots of the kids know I'm a Christian. That's probably about as far as it goes, really. Ask how was your weekend, you tell them where you were, what you were doing, and that's about as far as it goes, really. There's not an easy way to share your faith when you're in a public school.
This would be for Arise. What would you say to maybe some of the parents in here who would love to home educate, but don't feel like they're in a position to be able to do so?
Sorry. I think families who want to home educate and they don't feel that they're in a position to, that feeling not able to be in a position to can have different forms. Some of it can be financial. If both parents are working, and to home educate means that you need to drop working hours, so somebody needs to be at home, or a change of career, so somebody's at home with the kids or going part-time and working that out. So there's a financial cost to home education that can look different. And there's that kind of out of the box thinking. Yes, it can take a big statement of faith. I've often said over the years, we've never home educated because we have ever been able to afford it. We've home educated because God's called us to that. And we've been home educating for 16 years. And we've always paid the bills. There's always been food on the table. But in saying that, there is still sacrifices. And for some families, that might mean downsizing, or it might mean changing how they do work life, and asking, just praying into how is that going to look for us as a family. The other thing that could be, I don't know how to do this kind of question, is you don't feel qualified. And I think it's a big problem that a lot of families feel. They don't feel like they're qualified. You get families, the parents will say, I was terrible at maths. How am I going to teach maths to my child? I struggled to even get past, for adults of my age, standard grade maths, which is now Nat 5 maths. And these are real concerns, and there's ways to get around that. Arise Home Education is an online provider of classes for Christian home educating teens. So there's people like us and other organisations that can help with those skill gaps, if you like, that exist. And again, there's this idea, if you've got younger children, so obviously teens are trying to think, I can't teach my child maths to get a qualification, or I can't teach them science or English. That's a big question for families of teenagers. But for younger children, God has created you to be your child's parent, and they're your children. And in God's grace, He can help, and He always brings resources or help to help with that. I've got a degree, I've got skills, but I've got children who actually have very different skills to me. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know how to just do that with these children, because I'm not, for example, I've got a very sporty son and very gifted kind of in sports and things. It's not me. I was always the last pick for PE. But God has made a way. So everything we do is a step of faith. And I really feel that any time God calls us to anything, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, but the gentleman who spoke first talking about the Christian school here at Melville Knox School, and how the school was birthed in faith. The Melville Knox Academy, they didn't come with a building, with a pile of money, with all the teachers in place. They came with a vision from God to set up a school. And it's exactly the same with home educating. Every single one of us, regardless if you've got very little education or if you've got like a PhD, feels equipped to adequately home educate. I've got a degree, and when I first started home educating, it felt terrifying. I felt, how am I going to do this? How am I going to teach my child to read? What am I going to do? It felt a big, scary thing to do. And I've been doing it for 16 years. I've got a daughter at university. I've got a son he's in training. He's about to go into next step in his career. God makes a way, and it's that step of faith.
Thank you. We've just about run out of time, but I have one quick question, and it would probably be for Neil or Gozin, and it would be, what advice would you give to parents who have their children in state school and they're maybe being taught stuff or being influenced by stuff that they're not comfortable with? How would you advise them to respond to that and act on that?
Take them out. Take them out. Take them out. That's one option. Take them out. It's a hard one because, as you know, when Emma was just explaining, like, yeah, home education is a big step of faith as well. If you can do it, it's a step of faith. There's Christian schools, look for them, see what you can do, or stand up and say, no, what you're teaching is wrong. And let's see what happens. And then just call us at the Christian Legal Center if anything happens, and we will fight for you, because we don't want to see any child be without an education. And we understand it's hard from the state system. It's very hard to, we want to make a difference. We want to make a stand on all these issues, but it's not going to change overnight. It's going to take a long time, right? And we can see that. And so as a Christian, don't be afraid to speak. Don't be afraid to stand up. And if there's issues, then there are people out there who are there to help and who can support and give advice. And we'll just stand together. I think it's a hard thing in the state system, but we've got to not be in fear. As I said in my talk, actually, to stand up and don't bow down, and let's speak up, because we don't want to see indoctrination. We want to see a change in kids for the better.
I would like to put forward a third option. I like those. They're great options. Open dialogue with our young people is so important. So depending on the age of the child, say if they're able to have a dialogue about it, particularly if they're a teenager, really sit and listen to their concerns, really sit and listen to what is it about what's going on, or, maybe express your concerns to them. Have an open dialogue, make it a collaborative decision, because ideally, if you can, great, homeschool. I'm definitely an advocate for that, or supporter of that. However, there's also a way that we need to not remove ourselves from the world and equip our young people in the world also. But that comes around having a really strong Christian faith, attending church, having dialogues. A good church, it's true.
It needs to be a good, solid church.
Yeah, but also we need to understand that conversations, the first time a person hears something is usually when they're most susceptible to it and kind of like, okay. I heard a pastor say that the first time he was introduced to sex was at school. Whereas and then he learned the ways that his age group were talking about it. And then when he then heard the Christian way, that second way of doing things had to fight with the first way that they heard. So my guidance will be get in there early with certain principles, certain conversations, even if it's just like a introduction, keep the open dialogue, and then decide what's best. Pray. See what God's telling you to do with the situation. Sometimes it is remove that child right now. Sometimes it's, equip that child so that they can stand. I remember one student, she was definitely Christian. She even looked at me, she said, "Miss, you a pastor?" And I'm like, "What makes you say that?" I wasn't a pastor, just a pastoral manager. And I was like, "What makes you say that?" She goes, "The words you use." I was like, "You're a wise girl, get back to class." But I liked her because she stood up. When they were having conversations about LGBTQ, she was the one that was like, "No, miss, no, I don't subscribe to this." So, let's build our children's backbone so that they can stand and these discussions with their peers. Let's equip them with what's really going on. That would kind of be my encouragement.
Well, thank you everybody for your answers, and again, nobody's going away anytime soon, so if you do have any more questions, please feel free to approach them on the break and ask those questions. Thank you very much.